Howdy, Possum Patty here. It's April 1st and I'm nature journaling. There are so many different ways to nature journal, and there is no one wrong way to nature journal. Today's page is a little bit more passive than some of the other pages I've been doing recently. I call a passive page being inspired by nature, but maybe staying in and doing a little research on things I'm interested in. Hey Google, what's sphagnum moss?
According to Wikipedia, sphagnum is a genus of approximately 380 accepted species of mosses, commonly known as peat moss. Accumulations of sphagnum can store water, since both living and dead plants can hold large quantities.
I call active nature journaling being outside, observing, walking around with my journal, and sketching and taking notes. Or maybe going down to the bog to look at some specimens, do some collecting, and then come inside to examine them more closely. This page was inspired by what I saw in the woods. A gentle breeze lifted some leaves off the floor of the forest and made them dance and swirl among the trees. Dancing leaves. I started thinking about descriptive words for the wind. What do we call the wind at different speeds? How does the wind at different speeds affect the trees? So I went online and I found a couple of wind scale charts. Now this one is from metserve.com and it's based on the Beauford Wind Scale. I did cut it up a little bit to put it in here because mostly I was interested in the wind words and how they affected the trees. I left off parts like wind speed and knots because I'm on the land and not on the water. So I pasted this in my journal, and then I did some more research and I found another chart also based on the Beauford Wind Scale, and this one has the numbers. It has the descriptive words, and it has the speed in miles per hour. And then there's more descriptive clues and damage effects of the wind at different speeds. I like this one because it had the miles per hour wind speeds and some other descriptive words here. So then I pasted this in my journal. I wrote my metadata. First quarter moon on April 1st, temp in the 40s, chilly north wind. And then, being inspired by the dancing leaves in the woods, I wrote a poem. On a gentle breeze today, in various stages of decay, a gaggle of brown leaves left the ground, rose and danced, and then once again settled down. I decorated my letters with some colored pencils. Then I felt like I needed to decorate the page, so I put a little watercolor around the edge. I used my little Winsor Newton watercolor set. I tried to stick to the color theme that was on the chart, so I did yellows and greens and blues, and then a couple of reds and purple magenta over here. And then I stamped some leaves. I have some old stamps I have been collecting. And I just have these little inkers. And I just inked them and stamped on top of the watercolor. I looked back in my journals to see how in years past I had recorded the wind. Here are just a few samples of the ways that I've recorded the wind over the last years. This one was in 2009 and I was watching the towels on the clothesline. And each towel took its turn in blowing in the breeze. This one would flap out, and then this one, and then that one. It was only one towel at a time, and I thought that was quite unusual. They didn't all blow out at the same time. In 2010, I was doing a project with my environmental science class, and they were to take articles of what was happening every day and respond to it. This was in 2010, and there were a lot of tornadoes out west. And I found this quote on a website, santharia.com, about the air. It's invisible, unpredictable, unreliable, playful, soothing, destructive, inspiring, and life-giving. It represents all that we cannot see, our souls, our spirits, our minds, and our hearts. The unfettered element of air controls the purity of the spirit, the heart, the clarity of thought within the mind, focus of intent, and unhindered sight. But air is not always calm. Air's influence can be felt, from a playful breeze to a roaring hurricane. Wind, as the mind, stands for intellectual achievement, wisdom, and learning. Also that same year, another article about tornadoes touching down. And I wrote a little story of the day that I was in a tornado in Doniphan, Missouri. I was at Three Rivers Community College, and a tornado sat down right outside the window of my class. And that was quite an experience that I'll never forget, and I wrote that down here. Again in 2010, this is more whimsical. I was watching the leaves in the driveway, and they all were blowing up in a whirlwind. And it reminded me of little elves dancing, and I found this images of these little elves dancing, and I put it in my journal. Like waves on the ocean, the grass ripples with each gust of wind. The paper-like brown leaves hurry pell-mell down the driveway. The starling clutches the swaying bird feeder as it selects a tasty morsel. Just a poetic interpretation of the day. In March 2014, I did a quick sketch of the sugar maple outside my bedroom window and noted how the March wind was blowing. The maple tree outside the kitchen window is waving her arms to get my attention. The March wind, she calls. Her branches inscribe circles against the sky. The sun is higher, the sap rises. Robins and juncos search the grass around her trunk. I made a little note here. Not all the branches bend together. The more flexible parts of the tree are moving faster in the wind. And in 2017, we had 2 hurricanes. Harvey heading to Houston and Irma aiming for the Keys. Because we name our hurricanes with people names, I represented the hurricanes as people. Harvey is a man walking towards Houston, a little wind coming off of his head. And Irma, a woman in the ocean, with the seas starting to rise and the wind blowing her hair. And then in 2019, another hurricane, Hurricane Dorian, sailing across the Atlantic towards the Bahamas. The winds whipping up the ocean and whipping up her hair. There are many different ways to record the wind. You can use science, you can use prose, you can use poetry, you can use art. And your art can be realistic or whimsical. Thanks for coming along today. Bye-bye.